Hi, my name is Alex, and in a little less than 2 weeks, I will be moving from my comfortable, tame apartment to a very uncomfortable and dangerous wooded wilderness with nothing but some basic tools and a few chickens. Now, this video is primarily for friends and family who have questions and concerns about my upcoming lifestyle, but if you're interested in the journey I'm about to take, make sure you stick around. So, why am I quitting my job and moving to a very dangerous and hostile mountainscape? It's kind of a long story, but it all started back when I was a child. Me and some of my siblings used to do this thing we called survival days, where we went camping in our yard or the nearby forest for a few days and just hoped for the best. Now, as children, we were just having fun living in our own wilderness, but it instilled in me this desire to make it into an actual lifestyle. So after the first survival days, I became obsessed with this self-sufficient lifestyle and wilderness survival. And I didn't know it at the time, but this passion would subtly direct every choice that I made moving forward. And I know it sounds like I'm making this transition solely because it's something that I want to do, which would be quite selfish, but to me, it's so much more than that. This opportunity is a culmination of 14 incredibly difficult years of hard work and preparation. I've met many people who desire this lifestyle as strongly as I do, but they don't feel like they can make it if they transition over. So I'm making these videos as a trail of breadcrumbs for them to follow. I'm making this transition because I know that it's incredibly difficult to live in society, trapped by the daily 9-to-5 grind when all you want to do is go camping forever, and I want to help people make the transition to a more self-sufficient and alternative lifestyle. For the last 14 years, I felt like I needed to suppress this desire so that I could be a well-functioning cog in society. But every time I tried to be a better cog, I ended up finding myself wanting to go back to the basics, whether that was a little garden in my windowsill or volunteering at a district forester's office. There was always that 1 ounce of rebellion in me that just couldn't stand being kept in a box. And I know there are tons of others out there that feel the same way. So I'm making the transition to a bushcraft and primitive lifestyle, in part because I desire it, but mostly to help others who aren't strong or brave enough to do the same. I want to create a culture of knowledge and shared understanding that'll help people make the transition from their 9-to-5 grind to a more self-sufficient and alternative lifestyle, and that is my why. So I hope that makes as much sense to you as it does to me, but if not, feel free to leave a comment below. In the meantime, I'd like to answer some of the most common questions I've gotten as it pertains to my future, mostly in regards to safety. So what safety precautions have I taken? Now, this is a variation of the most common question that I get asked, and while I will be moving to an untamed wilderness there are quite a few precautions I have taken to ensure my safety and well-being along the way. Anytime you move to an unknown region, it's really important to research the flora and fauna to see what will be a potential threat to you. In my case, we have the big boys, such as bears, mountain lions, and coyotes, and smaller boys, such as snakes, raccoons, mosquitoes, ticks, and other various parasites. Now, the knowledge of something is half the battle, and as long as you know that it's potentially a threat, you can actively work towards diffusing it. In my case, for the big boys, we got an electric fence that's designed to be strong enough to keep bears and other large wildlife at bay, and this will in theory keep me safe within the fence, but worst case scenario, I do have weapons. For the smaller boys, I've done extensive research as to how to avoid confrontations, as well as various ways to deter the fauna from the land I live on. I plan on making videos on these in the future, but for the most part, knowing how to avoid or coexist with the threat is far easier than exterminating them altogether, especially if you can't even see them all the time. On top of knowing the flora and fauna, I've also set up weekly check-ins with some of my friends so I can maintain healthy emotional and spiritual states while being completely alone. Isolation is incredibly dangerous, and only a fool would walk into something like this thinking that they are the exception to the rule. So I've also made it a goal to post a video once a week, so I will be going into town to get internet about once a week, and in the future I do plan on mingling in the various farmers markets so that I can still have a glimpse of society while paying whatever bills I may have. Another question I get frequently is, what will you do for food and water? Now, I've made it a goal not to harm the local fauna by hunting, so I will be taking a few chickens with me for a source of eggs and protein, and forage for whatever else I can. I have plans to set up a garden, but because the soil is so poor, I'm really unsure of how well that'll turn out in the beginning, but I do have about 45 days worth of food in my vehicle, so worst case scenario, I can live off of that while attempting to improve my quality of life and food sources. As for water, there is a Four Seasons spring-fed creek on the land, but because it's a karst spring, water is not as pure as I would like it to be, so I won't be drinking from it without filtering it and boiling it. But even if it was a pure spring-fed creek, it's always a good idea to filter and boil the water before consumption because you really don't know what's upstream. And while this all sounds fantastic and idealistic, I have managed to save up enough money to live for about a year and a half without getting a job, so worst case scenario, I can buy groceries from the town that's about 10 miles away. Another question I get is, what will I do for shelter, or is there a building? The simple question is no, there are no structures on the land, but the clay quality under the topsoil is incredible. And there is a sand deposit about a quarter of a mile away, so I'm gonna build a temporary clay structure, and once I'm more established, I will be building a cob house. I've been researching organic structures and shelters that make use of local resources for about a year now, and I believe that this is the cheapest and best way for me to create a shelter. It's easy to underestimate the amount of time and effort put into making these type of shelters, but I can assure you, I have looked into this pretty well, and I believe that it is doable to have a shelter built for winter before summer ends, as long as I don't mess around too much. Another question I get frequently is, what are you doing for electricity? Now, I do have a solar setup planned, but initially I want to avoid electricity, so I will be bringing a power bank and a portable solar setup just to charge my recording and editing equipment. What are your long-term goals? Now, I never really know how to answer this question because I can never tell if they're asking about the long-term goals for the land or the long-term goals for myself. But ideally, I want to make a self-sufficient food forest so that in about 5 to 10 years, I can pass on this land to someone that is like-minded and they can take care of it with minimal to no effort. This not only gives someone a chance to easily make the transition into this lifestyle, but it also gives me the ability to change biomes. The goal in this is that I'd start over from scratch in a different piece of land with a different biome and teach people how to live there. Some of the biomes I hope to live in are the plains, forests, mountains, deserts, tundra, tropical, and whatever you call Alaska. But to start with, I just want to teach people how an average Joe can live in the middle of nowhere on a very small budget. And finally, what are your biggest concerns moving into this? Now, I get asked this question mostly by people who I've known for years, but I think my concerns are concerns that a lot of people have when making the transition like this. And to answer, I think at the heart of it, it's the fear of the unknown. And aside from that, I think there's also this fear for your own safety. I've trained pretty vigorously to live in the wild, so I'm probably gonna have more concerns as they come, and I may post them on this channel if they're valid, but for now, there's so much stuff that I don't know that I'm concerned about everything. Now, these are the most commonly asked questions I get, but if you have a different question that you'd like answered, please leave a comment below and I'll try my best to answer it. Thank you all so much for watching. I know this kind of dragged on, but like I said, this is mostly for people who have questions and concerns about my upcoming adventure. And if you've watched this far, then that means you're at least sort of interested in what's to come. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. I'm super excited to start my adventure and I hope to see you in the following videos. Thank you again so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.